Hello and welcome to NOV Live. My name is Shelby Dumaine. I'm so excited to be here today talking to you live in our studio. We're here in Navasota, Texas, and we're so excited to be able to see everybody online. We have a really great show. We're talking to an expert from our well stream processing group here at NOV. So it's going to be a really great opportunity to get a little bit of insight about some tech and expertise that we're working on. And before I get to that, I do want to mention a couple housekeeping here right up top. If you have any questions for our guests throughout the episode, go ahead and comment those, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter. Anywhere you're watching, go ahead and comment your questions. We're going to have people in the chat being able to answer those and be able to feature some at the end of the episode. And if you've seen the show before, you know that we also typically open with a little bit of a trivia before we get into the topic and dive deep into what we'll be discussing today. So to kick that off, when I read this question, if you think you know the answer, you can comment that below. And hopefully, when we reveal it at the end, you'll be able to see if you got it right. And I'm really excited about today's trivia question. I think it's a really fun one. It's something that I learned, something brand new. And so I'm excited to read it to you. So get your keyboard hands ready. Today's trivia question is, what is the oldest operational offshore oil platform? So this is one, I'll give you a hint. It is still in operation. It's still producing oil today. And I won't give you too much more of a hint, but maybe at the end I'll give you one more before I reveal the answer. So again, if you think you know it, what is the oldest operational offshore oil platform? Go ahead and comment that below. And I look forward to seeing everybody there in the comments. I have my computer screen here today, so anything you comment, I'll be able to look at it and be reading that through the show. All right, well, without further ado, I want to kick it off. So like I mentioned, we're talking to an expert from our NOV well stream processing group. And specifically today, we're talking about brownfield solutions. So we have on Glen McLellan. He is the Director of Field Optimization. So hello, Glen.
Hi, Shelby. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on. I know just peeking ahead at some of the topics we're going to be discussing, it's going to be really, really great. So I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so just to kick it off, kind of with a little bit of a starting question, the oil and gas production market is changing. There's certain elements that kind of impact that. So can you talk a little bit about the bigger picture, kind of looking forward as we step out of this, or hopefully step out of this pandemic COVID world?
Yeah, so the oil and gas industry's got a very important role to play in the just transition of net zero globally. It's really important that they are operating their assets as efficiently and to getting the performance out of them that they really need without having to put more energy into doing it. So it's a real challenge for the industry to meet, but they seem to be up for it. And we help the operators to improve both their production efficiency and their environmental performance, and that in turn will help reduce their carbon footprint. As to COVID pandemic, there's been a lot of elective maintenance and improvement scopes that have been paused while the COVID pandemic's been on, because they've had to reduce the amount of people on site or on their offshore assets. So we're starting to see that this year they're really needing to get back on top of that, and they're picking things up, and I think we're anticipating a pretty busy 2022.
So as we go into this next question, kind of diving deeper into brownfield solutions, can you first, I know a lot of people watching probably already know the difference between brownfield and greenfield, but for those who maybe are students or who are new to the industry, do you mind just telling us the difference between those two fields real quick?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So greenfield is a new asset. It's a new project that's being built from scratch. There was nothing there before it was built. Brownfield is an existing project or an existing asset that's already operational. So for a brownfield one, what we're doing is going in there and trying to make them operate more efficiently, help them to operate more efficiently, I should say. a lot of the time the environmental legislation is getting tighter and tighter on existing assets, which is the brownfield ones. So we can go in there and try and help them meet these new challenges.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I appreciate you kind of defining that for us. I know that that's really helpful for some of our viewers. And so then when we're talking about brownfield solutions that our well stream processing group has here at NOV, what does that mean? What specifically are you talking about as far as the solutions go?
Um, the easiest way to summarize what we do is that we optimize their existing processes. So we can remove bottlenecks if and a bottleneck, what I mean by that is if there's something restricting their performance, like meeting the production targets that they want, we can help them remove those bottlenecks. We also help them improve their environmental performance, as I've already said, and we support their operations through we've got a global network of specialists. So we have people we call on in every continent, so we can go to the assets and help deliver the types of services that our customers need to help optimize the processes. And I guess to put a bit more detail on that, if a customer's got a specific operational challenge, they're maybe not the performance of their process isn't what it should be. It's not meeting its design specification. Then what we don't take a technology catalog out and offer a range of widgets that are off the shelf. So we would usually go out and try and find out what the root cause of their issues are. And that's a case of doing some analysis of their entire process the whole way through, and trying to identify what that is. And it could be the image that's on the screen just right now is a good example of one of the solutions that it may be, which is a set of new internals for a separation system. If they're having specific problems that's causing their separation performance to be poor, then we would identify that is it, and it is the internals that's causing that. So we would design and supply those internals. It might just be that it's one of our guys needing to go to the asset and do the analysis, suggest some changes to the process, and maybe even changing chemical injection rates or levels within the separator, and then that is all that's needed to improve the performance. It could be that is the case, and our specialists that go to site have a developer level of knowledge, so they understand all the technologies intimately, and they understand the fluids and the impact of the fluids on the technology, and the technology on the fluids. So they can optimize it in real time while they're there, and if need be, it could be that there's nothing that can be done with the existing system because it's just at capacity. So if that was the case, then we would design an appropriate skid mounted process package to fit into a small area and be able to to meet the targets that they need. And one of the other things that we do as well is if it's an offshore asset, for instance, and weights may be a challenge, then we would work with for example, our fiberglass division to supply some lightweight, handrails, pipework, gratings, that type of thing. Or it could be that there's an issue in the turret of an FPSO, and we would work with our APL division to do that. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is reduce the capital expenditure for the operator and optimize their operational expenditure, which essentially is what they're targeting to get the performance they need without having to spend too much money.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that, like I said, if you watch the show, normally I'm at the desk doing the social media and kind of marketing side. But what makes it both challenging and so exciting about talking about these products is that, like you said, it's not something off the shelf, out of the box. It's such a unique offer. What y'all can do, all the talent that y'all have. So I think that's really, really fascinating. And can you talk to a little bit? Is all of what you just mentioned applicable to just onshore or just offshore, or is it for both? And if so, what's kind of the difference between the two there?
Yeah, I kind of nearly alluded to it in the last answer, but the difference is that offshore you usually don't have very much space. There's always a limit to how much weight that you can put on an asset. So whatever the solution is, it needs to be designed to fit in a very small space if it's a skid, or more often than not, what we would be trying to do is just make what's there work as well as it possibly can do. But for onshore, there's a lot more space. They're usually designed with a lot more capacity within them, so they can handle upset conditions. But there are the ever growing legislative pressures and the market pressures that they have for onshore means that the onshore operators are really having to start focus on their process performance and their environmental performance. So it's applicable to both, but it's a different situation, but our approach is applicable to both.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And I know, so when we talk normally about solutions that are geared towards maybe energy transition or kind of, helping with that environmental footprint, I think a lot of times we talk about in the big picture and not always how it helps clients. But I'm curious, how do the Wellstream processing groups, Brownfield Solutions, specifically deliver on clients' objectives?
In a number of ways. If we're doing what I've just been speaking about and minimizing the amount of additional equipment that is required just by optimizing what they've got, it means they're not installing new packages, they're not building new things. So that is obviously reducing their carbon footprint compared to what it could be if they were to install that additional equipment. But also, like if we were able to optimize their existing process and lower the temperature that they're operating at and still have the performance they need, then they wouldn't be burning additional hydrocarbons through thermal heating systems. So that is also helping with their environmental footprint and their targets there. The images that are on the screen at the moment, well, that image there that's on now, that's a float oil terminal in the Orkney Islands up in the north of Scotland where I'm based, and we have an environmental laboratory there where we provide ecotoxicology services and environmental impact assessment services. So we're looking at the toxicity of the discharge from any asset, whether it's onshore or offshore, and using those types of tools, we can then feed that back into the process design and the process optimization to help minimize the amount of chemicals that they're using or just optimize the process generally. So yeah, that all works towards the kind of targets that these operators are having now in their energy transition and their net zero targets. And if they're looking at, it could be things like electrification of the process, then we work with other parts of NOV, such as the offshore renewables team or the hydrogen group, and we work with, and we're working actively on studies that's looking at that as well. So it really does feed into what their targets are as well.
Yeah, actually, that facility in Orkney, I think it's so great to see images from that, and I know it's definitely a place on my NOV bucket list to visit. But I did want to mention for our audience watching right now, if any of those kind of what Glenn mentioned about the Flata facility in Orkney, if any of that kind of caught your attention, we actually had you, Glenn, on the show. I don't remember if it was 2019 or it might have been, 2020 or 2021. But either way, we have an episode where we kind of did a deep dive tour into that facility. So I can't help myself. I did want to plug that really quick. And while I'm talking to our audience, I also wanted to mention, if you have any questions on what we've talked about today, any questions for Glenn, feel free to go ahead and comment those below, and we'll have experts ready on the line to answer some of those questions, as well as feature some at the end of the episode. So definitely let us know, whether you're watching Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or even Twitter, any questions you might have for us today. And so I'll get right back into it. Glenn, I know, talking about all this stuff, it's always great. Even in theory, it's awesome, but it's even better when we can hear some real life examples of when you've done this. So can you talk to any, I might have to ask you to narrow it down because I hear there's many examples, but can you speak to any of those examples of kind of when you've used this approach?
Yeah, sure. This is what we're doing every single day. So we literally have thousands, but I'll try and think of one that was quite recent. And that was where we had a call from an operator who was struggling to hit their environmental discharge targets. So that there's a limit of 30 milligrams per litre of oil in water that's discharged to the sea in most places around the world. So they wanted us to offer them a piece of rental equipment that they could stick on the end of pipe on their discharge point and get them back in spec. So after some pretty detailed technical discussions with their operations team, our process and chemistry specialists carried out an offshore survey and identified some modifications that would enable them to meet that targets, but without actually installing any new equipment. So that obviously helps, save the amount of money that they're going to have to spend. So there's reduced capex and optimized opex. So and still to meet their regulatory obligations. So to go into a bit more detail, what we did there is they started at the first stage of separation. Start up there. Don't start where the problem is manifesting itself. Find out the root cause. So they reviewed the whole process, looked at the full process conditions such as flows, temperatures, pressures, the liquid levels, and the chemical injection regime, that type of thing, and did that through the whole process at each stage. From that, we build a big picture of where the root cause of the problem could be. So, and although the problem was down there, it was manifesting itself at the discharge. It could easily be, for example, just poorly designed internals that was causing the problem. And that's designed like the internals of the first stage separator or the hydrocyclones or such like. On this occasion, it was just simply a combination of adjusting the operating philosophy of the separation train, changing the levels a little bit, reducing the amount of chemicals that they were injecting, because actually the overdosing of the chemicals has a negative effect in some cases. So we helped to optimize that, and we changed the setup of the hydrocyclones, and that basically got them back into spec. But with similar challenges, we've retrofitted internals. We've put new internals in the separators, or the image there is an FEA analysis, a finite element analysis of a inlet device to make sure it's strong enough to cope with increased flow rates. So we'd be, and that image there is actually our guys inside one of the separators installing some new internals. So if need be, that's what we'll do. We'll go inside and we'll design and supply the internals for the vessels. And in this case that I've just mentioned, we didn't need to do that. And that is, adding new equipment is always the last resort. We want to try and optimize what's there first, and that I'm very aware that separation and produced water that I've been speaking about quite heavily, because that's my kind of comfort zone. It's what I've been doing for such a long time. But we do this for every process that's in the topsides. So it could be, a seawater system which has recently debottlenecked a seawater system in the UK. It could be optimizing a MEG system, a hydrate inhibition system, or even just optimizing gas scrubbers to handle higher flow rates than they were designed for, that type of thing. So that's kind of, I think that's maybe covered your question, is it?
I think so. Yeah. Like I said, I knew it would be a big ask to list some examples. So I appreciate you being able to cover just a couple. I think we could probably talk about it all day. If we wanted to, there's that many. But and I think, if anybody wanted to learn more, just my final question before we take a couple audience questions, where could somebody learn more about everything we've talked about today, all of the Wellstream brownfield solutions?
Well, the website's a good start. If you go to nov.com/products/brownfield-solutions, you'll be able to find it there. But if you go to nov.com and search in the search bar for brownfield solutions, you'll find us, and you'll find a lot more information about the individual bits and pieces that we do, that when you pull it all together is the big picture of what we offer.
Man, I think you could just about host this, because as you were listing that URL, I was like, I'm going to also mention that folks can go online and use the search bar. And then you covered that too. I was like, oh man, you got me there. So yeah, absolutely. You can go on NOV.com, use the search function, and find out more. And actually, I think, so we do have some audience questions, and that almost plays right into this first one that we got from online. Can you talk a little bit about maybe a little bit of the other brownfield solutions that NOV does offer?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did mention a couple of them earlier on, but NOV's expertise and services cover every part of the oil and gas production, from the wellbore operations right through, the subsea stuff, the risers, the rigs, the full topsides. So it's everything. And we've got brownfield, like a dedicated brownfield service team that in every part of that business. So we, like as Wellstream Processing, we engage with all of our colleagues across all of that parts of the business so that we can, fix any problems that are there while we're there. Why put three people out when two people can come up with a solution,
Mm-hmm.
supported by our other experts on the show.
Awesome. And this next question I think came from some of the skeptics out there, which we love. We love those kind of questions. So can you talk, the question actually specifically was, how do you guarantee that the solutions you come up with will be successful?
That's a good question.
It is.
Well, partly because we've been doing this for over 30 years. I guess
That
it's
would
not a
help.
very good answer to the question,
Yeah.
but it definitely, we've done so many projects optimizing
Mm-hmm.
existing brownfield assets that we have the experience to draw on when we see a new problem. It's very seldom that it is a new problem. We've usually done something similar in the past, so it's partly that. But I think the other part of it is the facility that you mentioned kindly earlier on about the test facility up in the north of Scotland. We've been since 1988. We've been developing, testing, verifying process technologies, and so across the full range of different process technologies. So we have a huge database of performance information, and we've taken all of that performance information and we have developed that into uh, our own predictive models for each different type of technology. So if we design an improvement to a process, then we would check it in our models, and we would be able to say with absolute confidence that the performance we're saying that we'll be able to get is what we'll be able to get. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a combination of the experience, but also the models that we've developed as a result of those experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if I have my numbers right, but I think it's something like 10,000 hours, and you're considered an expert in something. And if I had to put money on it, I'd bet we're in that range for sure by now, and how much experience we have with brownfield solutions. So I appreciate that. And this next question. So we got one on where we can do this, where we can operate. So I know you talked about Orkney. So is it just in the North Sea region, or where all are we able to do these solutions?
Yeah, obviously I'm in the UK, so the team that works specifically in the UK, most of their work is in the North Sea, both
Mm-hmm.
in the UK sector, but in the Norwegian sector as well. And also, actually, when I think about it, we've had people in offshore in Denmark and in the Netherlands this year as well. But the brownfield, the Wellstream brownfield organization is global, and I'm involved with all of those guys. We work, and even the guys in the UK have been offshore or onshore in every continent this year, and not this year because we're just past in
Right.
we're just into 2022 last year, sorry. So yeah, we are a truly global team, with the centers of excellence moving around the world as needed. Our guys go all over the place. It's been quite difficult in the pandemic, but we have still been traveling to different parts of the world even during the pandemic.
Absolutely. Very impressive. We always, that's one of my favorite parts of, even my role working for NOV is getting to see kind of global impact and all of the teams that work together to really serve our clients. So I think that's really excellent to hear about for brownfield solutions, but really, I'd say most of our solutions kind of have a similar global reach. And so I did want to say thank you to our audience for submitting those questions. However, if you do have any, if we didn't get to yours, still comment those. Like I said, we'll have experts there in the comments. Maybe even Glenn later be able to go and answer some of those. So if you have questions, definitely still leave those, and we'll get to as many as we can in those comment sections. And before I leave you today, I did want to reveal the Rig Geek question, or the trivia question that we asked there at the beginning. So we had asked, what is the oldest operational offshore oil platform? I gave you a little bit of a hint that it still is producing oil, but I did want to reveal that answer, so I'm trying to stall. I always try to drag this part out to see if anybody has any last minute guesses. They can try to get those in. So I'll repeat the question one more time. What is the oldest operational offshore oil platform? And the answer is the Neft Deslari. And a couple of fun facts, because when I saw this, I couldn't get enough of it. I think it's so fascinating. The Neft Deslari is in the Caspian Sea. It is an entire functioning town. Construction began in 1949, and oil production began in 51. It has hotels, there's hostels, a bakery, a power station, total of 7 hectares of surface area consisting of different islands connected by about 200 kilometers of trestle bridges. It's all supported on stilts. I saw in here that it looks like some of it may have been reclaimed by the sea, but its rigs still produce oil, and it has a town population of about 5,000. So I was reading that. I thought that was really great. I didn't even know about that. Now I want to do even more research on the Neft Deslari. So if you did get it right, man, y'all are more into it than I am. So that's fascinating. I love it. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, Glen, for coming on and lending your expertise. And again, I wanted to mention if any of you want to learn more about it real quick before we go, you can check out, you can search Brownfield Solutions on NOV.com. If you want to rewatch this episode or any of our past episodes, you can go to NOV.com/live. We have our entire library available there for you to watch back. But other than that, thank you so much for tuning in and getting involved in this show. And we will see you next time. Thank you.